So I'll go ahead and get us started. With us today, we have some of our legislators from Salt Lake City. We also have legislators who represent other areas but who sit on important committees related to education. We're really grateful for your time today. We know how busy you are, and we're thrilled to have you with us. We've also got 3 of our board members with us, actually 2 at the moment. We have our board president, Melissa Ford, in the blue over here, and our board member, Mohammed Baid, in the other corner. We'll be joined shortly by a 3rd board member, Dr. Kennedy, who will be joining us in just a little bit. I've also invited today our association presidents, and I'll introduce them in this direction. So we have Elia Ocampo, who's the president of our Buildings and Grounds Association. We have Cindy Davis, the president of our Transportation Association. And then we have Tanya Slaughter over Child Nutrition. You want to raise your... There we go. Thank you. Okay. I wanted to make sure they were in the room. I didn't have room for everyone on the panel, but these voices are important. And every role in our schools is crucial to making sure our kids are getting a good education, even the ones that get overlooked and the ones we may not think about every day. We've also got our panelists. We'll introduce you to them a little bit later, so skipping you all, sorry. And we have members of the Superintendent's Cabinet who are joining us today. We have Dr. Sandra Buendia, who is our Executive Director of Educational Equity and Student Support, Logan Hall over Human Resource Services, and we also have our Director of the Salt Lake Education Foundation, James Yapia, is with us. So those are the people in the room. We're here to answer any questions you might have. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Summer School 2022. As a lot of you know, the federal government has distributed a lot of money to schools. We used some of those ESSER dollars to really grow our summer school program this year. Our enrollment for this year between our K-8 and our secondary enrollment is 1,480 students, which is the largest cohort we've had in the district in a number of years. The reason we were able to have such a large cohort is because of those ESSER dollars. We advertise more broadly to families. We're also focusing on providing opportunities for every single K-8 student. So when you think about summer school, you often think about, okay, if you got enough in a class, you get a packet, you fill it out. That's not what we wanted our summer school to look like this year. There's opportunities for every student. If even your 4.0 students, if they want additional enrichment opportunities over the summer, we have those for them. For the high schoolers, we are focused more on credit recovery and making sure they're on track to graduate. But over the summer, that's what we're doing in our schools, and we're having programs across the district, including here at Glendale Middle, if you're interested in taking a look afterwards. I also wanted to share a little bit with you about South Park Academy. So one of the people here with us today is Chris Sullivan. I'll have him wave. He is going to be the administrator, the principal over this school. Now, South Park Academy is the school that's going to be at the new prison site when it relocates here in Salt Lake City. And we are gearing up to get ready for a cohort of students this fall. And we're super excited about that. Chris let me know yesterday that he is in the process of hiring his staff. And so we will be ready for those students. The focus for this school is to make sure that we're bringing educational opportunities to these students that are in the 21st century. So a lot of this will be tech-driven. It won't be the typical packets that some of these students have had in the past. They'll have technology. There's funding from the Department of Corrections to have laptops. iPads. One iPad for every 2 students. Those are items that can be checked out and taken to cells if somebody wants to do some additional work and access additional resources. The district is also going to provide laptops for every classroom. We won't be able to be one-to-one for all the students in the South Park Academy, but in every classroom, every student will be connected to a device. So while they're in class, they'll be able to access internet, be able to participate through Canvas, through different mobile apps, and really have an innovative experience as they're completing their programs. The school will focus on adult high school completion, but we will also be providing special education services to any students who are 18 to 22, which is something we're excited to do. Chris, did I miss anything?
Super excited to get started. We're going to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I also wanted to share some data from our assessment team. Over the last couple of years, we've had some very interesting schooling in, everywhere really, because of the pandemic. This slide that I'm showing you right here is our KEEP data. This is our kindergarten entry and exit data. This is really small. I'll email this out to everybody, so you'll be able to take a closer look at these graphs. But over here in the blue, you see our English language arts proficiency. And if you look at the second set of bars in 2019, that's where we were before the pandemic. We typically assess our students at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and the end of the year, so we can make sure that we're tracking performance, that we can correct anything that needs to be addressed, and that we're keeping our students on track and on grade level. In the spring of 2020, because of the pandemic, we were unable to administer our end-of-year assessment, so that's why you see just one column there from 2020. We don't have that end-of-year data. But what we did see in 2021 is unfinished learning. This is not unique to the Salt Lake City School District, but it's something we're working hard to correct. And the good news is that our most recent set of data show that we're on track. We're getting back to those pre-pandemic academic achievement levels, and we anticipate those will continue to rise. Speaking of RISE, this is our RISE test. This is an exam that's administered to our 3rd through 8th grade students. And you see the same pattern. You see that in 2019, the 2019-20 school year, we don't have that end-of-year data. But you see that things dipped significantly in 2021, the last school year. The good news, again, is that we're seeing that trending upwards, and our students are coming back to grade level and to the academic place we want them to be. I wanted to break this down a little bit more for you. So this slide shows information about the 2021-22 cohort of second graders. These were students who were in kindergarten when the pandemic started in the spring of 2020. That's a really crucial time in a student's education. And as we are looking at these assessment trends, we are focused really heavily on the K, first, and second graders, making sure that we get them on level by their 3rd grade year. And then we're paying attention as well to our high schoolers, especially those who are closest to graduation. So over here, what you'll see, these students were achieving. The far left is the fall of 2019. Bullet point number 2, you see here that there was an increase in their mid-year testing. Those students were doing well before the pandemic. They were achieving at greater levels than where they came in. But we don't have that 2020 end-of-year data. You see, when they came back in the fall, we dipped significantly. This is bullet point 3, the kindergartners and first graders. They were in remote learning starting in the fall of 2021. And one thing that I failed to point out in the previous slide, but is tough, is when you're in those really crucial grade levels, you're learning the very basics. You're learning how to read. You're learning to recognize letters and letter sounds. Due to being online, some of those things were a little bit difficult to transmit, and we see that our math scores are generally quite a bit higher for those younger grades. Recognizing numbers and counting, those are things that are a little bit easier to do over the internet, which is the tool that we had to teach our students last school year. But we're seeing, again, if you look at the right, that this cohort of students is coming back to grade level. So we know there's unfinished learning. We're working hard to address that, and we're seeing our students trending upward, and that's where we want them to be. A couple of other updates for you. This is something that was discussed in our board meeting last night, so it's not a definitive thing, but I wanted to at least tell you where we are. House Bill 475 provided additional funding for school districts, one-time money for capital and technology needs. The amount for Salt Lake School District is $2.4 million, and we're hoping to use that for school safety improvements. We don't know exactly what that'll look like right now, but we wanted to at least share that that's the direction that the board is wanting to look. So in the coming months, the board will take a look at more specific items that we can do with that money, but that's the general category where we want to focus that. Also, I didn't mention this, but if you have questions, stop me at any time. Raise your hand and let's chat together. I also wanted to share a little bit about the at-risk student add-on. So in the Salt Lake School District, we have a lot of students who fall into the at-risk category who are from economically disadvantaged families, who are multi-language learners, who qualify for free reduced lunch. And the state recently changed the formula by which they fund school districts who have large numbers of these students. Because of that, our district is going to receive an additional $1.1 million next year. This is revenue we didn't expect. We actually we actually thought that we might lose some funding because our enrollment is decreasing. We're so grateful to the legislature for this additional funding, and what the board is looking at doing with that is supporting our students in a couple of ways. One, additional counselors and social workers. These are some of the most crucial needs in our schools right now. Our district does a lot. We have one counselor for every elementary school. We've got social workers across the district, and that's typically what we've been using our at-risk funding for. School psychologists, social workers, counselors, these really crucial roles. But what we've got is not enough, unfortunately, and we're hoping we can do a little bit more with these additional funds. The board is also looking at possible intervention specialists or student advocates to help in our schools. As we get into the panel conversation, you're going to hear a little bit more about this particular issue that is concerning in our schools: student attendance, truancy with the moratorium that we had this last school year. And because we know that's such an urgent need, that's a place the board is looking to spend some of this money. All right, we're going to turn now to our panel discussion. So again, you've got those Post-it notes in front of you. As you think of questions for the panelists, write them down, and Ty will come get them from you. I'm going to introduce you to them so you know who you've got to answer your questions. Instructions. So I administered 2 surveys this spring. One was for our legislators. I asked you what you wanted to hear about at the next event that we had. And a lot of you told me that you wanted to hear from people on the front lines in our schools. You wanted to hear from teachers. You wanted to hear from support staff. And you wanted to hear from school administrators. So that's who we have today. I also administered a survey to our school administrators and asked them what the most crucial needs are. So we'll be talking about some of those today. The top issues, by far, the top 2 things that school administrators mentioned are, 1, attendance. The truancy moratorium made it incredibly challenging to make sure our students were at school, present, and learning. Coupled with the pandemic in general, it really was a challenging year. Employee retention is the other issue that was mentioned across the board, and it wasn't just for teachers. It's tough to retain our support staff. It's tough to recruit bus drivers, custodial staff, child nutrition workers. Across the board, we're really struggling with this, and part of the reason is the pay. It's an incredibly competitive job market, and this is part of why I wanted our association presidents in the room. We have our panelists who will be up here, but if anyone has a question for them, they're here to help provide information for us. I also pulled out a couple quotes, and here at the bottom of this slide, you'll see something from one of our Title I elementary administrators. I pulled out this quote specifically because this person summarized really well what most of the other administrators were saying. The top issue is teacher job satisfaction and retention. 2, special education and child find, which is not working for students in our highly impacted areas, which we have a lot of here in Salt Lake City. 3, there's a disconnect between what's being spoken about kind of, out in the world and what the challenges really are in schools. We saw a lot of bills related to curriculum. There was a bill related to our transgender student athletes. When there are really basic needs that we're not connecting in our schools right now, and really that's where the focus should be. It's hard to do some of these other really great things if basic needs aren't being met. I lost my place. Those are the main things that she had highlighted. A couple of issues that were mentioned several times in this survey. It was an open-ended survey, which made it hard to analyze, but it was easy to see the trends when I kept getting an answer over and over. But support staff, making sure that we have enough funding for paraprofessionals, for student advocates, for these crucial people who keep our schools running. And also making sure that we're funding and staffing our special education classrooms appropriately. It's so hard to retain staff everywhere. It's especially hard in our special education staffing. Our students develop relationships of trust with their teachers, with their support staff. If we can't hang on to them, then a student who already has numerous challenges is having to rebuild those relationships, might have a setback due to the nature of their particular disability. So this funding is incredibly important to help us retain those people that we need in our schools. Another quote I pulled out from one of our secondary administrators. This person said, "Schools are microcosms of society, so you can't deal with issues like attendance, test scores, behavior, and safety in a bubble. If families are suffering, kids will bring that into schools. Strong communities make strong schools, so addressing issues like minimum wage, access to health care, transportation, mental health, etc., directly impacts our schools. And that's another reason we appreciate the time of our legislators, because you work not just on public ed issues, you work on all of the issues. I was talking with Representative Ballard before we started, and I shared with her, in my community recently, a family had a teenager in crisis, in a mental health crisis, who was a danger to herself. There wasn't room at Huntsman Mental Health Hospital for this young girl. This is a family who has means, a family of privilege, and they're still not able to access the resources that they needed for their daughter. Think about the kids whose families don't speak English, whose families don't even know that these resources exist. And so the problems we're facing in our schools, a lot of them we're working to tackle, but a lot of them we need your support to address these issues more broadly in our society. The panel has 7 people, and I tried to make sure I had representation from across the district geographically. I've got people from Title I schools, from non-Title I schools. You have elementary, middle school, and high school. We have a special education teacher. We've got a principal who's over at one of our special education hub schools. We have a paraprofessional who's here to share her experience. We've got a couple who are, also happen to be parents in the district. So we've got a lot of perspectives, and I'm hopeful that it'll be a robust discussion today. This map shows you the 7 schools that are represented by our panelists today. So I really did try to pull from across the district and have representation that way. Our first panelist I'll introduce. They're in alphabetical order, no specific order, but Deborah Clough, she's the principal of Highland Park Elementary. She is a 19-year education veteran. She was previously a 5th grade teacher at Meadowlark Elementary, at Mountain View Elementary across the, did I put the wrong, that's the right one, right? Okay, Mountain View Elementary, just across the parking lot. And she was also previously a school administrator at Backham Elementary and at Parkview Elementary. And at the time that she was at Parkview, the Spanish dual language immersion program was at that school. So we're grateful for her today. And her school right now is located on the east side of the city in the Sugar House area, and she has one of our special education hubs. Rob Dahl is right here. He is a science teacher at Northwest Middle School, and we're thrilled to have him with us. He is also an aspiring school administrator. He's been awarded the Effective Teachers in High Poverty Schools incentive every year since it began, so thank you, legislature, for recognizing our teachers who are serving this very crucial population of students. He's worked with Title I students not just as a teacher, but also as a club advisor, as an athletics coach, and in many sports, it looks like. Kesley Green is on this side. She's one of the assistant principals here at Glendale Middle School. Kesley actually grew up and was raised in Salt Lake City, so she's also a Salt Lake School District alum, having gone to Backham Elementary, Hillside Middle School, and Highland High School. She is a former special education teacher who has K-8 experience, and she is currently an East High School parent as well.
And has recently been appointed principal.
Yes. Starting July 1st, Kesley will be our new principal at Riley. Thank you, Superintendent. Tyler Lamming over here is a science teacher at West High School. I didn't do 2 secondary science teachers on purpose. I actually didn't know that was a coincidence. But he started his education in Casper, Wyoming as an education support professional, and he's been teaching at West High School for the past 6 years. He teaches earth science and AVID. And he says his favorite class to teach is earth science with our multi-language learners, which we have a lot of at West High School. He's on the Salt Lake Education Association Executive Board, the UA Board of Directors, and also on various association committees. So he's deeply involved in making sure educators have what they need. We're glad he's here with us. We also have Dr. Jackie Moses over here on my right. She is a special educator at Whittier Elementary. She recently joined our school district, having been previously in the Chicago public school system. And she previously also taught at Trinity Christian College as coordinator of the Adult Studies Special Education Program and an assistant professor of education. We're thrilled she's with us today. We also have Jeremy Reynoso in the back. He is a kindergarten teacher at Meadowlark. He has spent his entire career teaching there, working with mostly students of color from low-income families, many of whom are multi-language learners, and we're really glad he's with us too. Deirdre Strait, here to my left, is a paraprofessional at Highland High School, but she's also a whole lot of other things. Her children have come through the district schools, so she has that experience. She's a former school community council chair. She's a former PTSA leader. She is on numerous committees in the district, the ELP, which is our gifted and talented program. She's worked with our refugee students. She's also on several committees for the state board, and essentially one of the most accomplished people here, Deirdre Strait. We're thrilled to have her with us too. So I'm going to, not quite yet. I'm going to bring our panelists up to the front. And if you have questions, again, a reminder to put those on the Post-it note. And if anyone has them, will you hold them up and Ty can gather them from you while we're having our panel come up? Thank you. I'm sure all your lights are green. Okay, so we've got some good questions already, but feel free to continue writing them. And we also have microphones, so I've turned them all on, and we can use that. If you'd rather just ask your question, we can do that too. So there's one in front of the superintendent, one in front of Representative Hollins, and I've shifted one here to Representative Daly Provo. Okay, our first question. NPR had a national story this week with fourth grade teachers saying that they basically have second grade students due to the loss of education during COVID. How are we doing in that regard? And feel free to pipe up, any of you.
I think your data shows it.
True. So our data did show that we have some unfinished learning to rectify, but the spring 2022 assessment data shows us that our students are coming back on track. Our teachers are working hard to make sure they have what they need for our students, and we expect to see continued growth. Does anyone have anything to add beyond what was in the data? Deirdre.
Well, I was going to say we also see that behaviorally, is my understanding too. I work with ninth graders at Highland High School, and so they really were online for middle school. And so what I'm hearing from teachers, because this is only I just completed my second year at Highland in this role, they're behaviorally just younger. And so whatever they could sort out typically in middle school, they're presenting in high school. So,
Jeremy.
Can I add that I think that specifically when we think about the needs of our students, they are going to be having these behaviors as well, but what that does is creates more difficult working conditions for our teachers and our staff. And that's why if there's one message that I'd really like to give today is that we need some greater support in our support staff for teachers. That will help the mental health of our teachers, and we will do better work that way. It just seems so clear to me because of my experience working with paras in our schools that it's that teamwork that needs to happen for us to feel like we're doing an effective job. When I feel isolated and in a way working alone, it just doesn't seem to work out for me. So whenever I have a para to work with or a team effort, I can really I say that's the way to go. And we need more support from more staff, more adults in the building to help meet the needs of our students.
I would agree. I would say that the social emotional learning has been a huge impact. Looking at our kindergartners coming in, having gone through pandemic and lacking the preschool, and I have fantastic kindergarten teachers, and they all were just like, it's a whole marked difference. Kiddos that are used to being just straight at home and isolated and coming in not being ready for kindergarten, having a lot more anxiety issues, separation issues that made being able to focus on that learning difficult. I think that we're starting to see an improvement in it, but it's been kind of a rough year, and without those support people, our teachers are doing magnificent. It's not a matter of that, but without those support people, I hired a behavior para that was able to help some of those kiddos that their behaviors were just so often. It wasn't because, they can be successful, but that struggle with that social emotional and there not being resources out in the community that when parents reach out, we try and connect them with, and the waiting lists are just beyond, and so they suffer and those behaviors increase, and without support help, then those behaviors just keep repeating and it interrupts the learning of several kids. And so I agree that support staff is critical.
I'd like to share what one of our principals said, and I have to agree. She said that we're not only working to help students learn to do school again, we're helping parents learn to do school again. And so if in this principal's perspective, we have to work on the parents and the students to get them reacclimated to doing school.
Just even I don't mean to skip over, sorry, but with attendance and that our policy of you've got 10 days, because we know that we had kiddos at home that their parents weren't able to stay home. And so we needed to look at it through that lens and say, you have 10 days to. And it's like, we haven't recovered from that. It's like, they can stay home today. It's relearning how that school and attendance is critical, and that those missed days make a difference for their kids and increase those gaps that are already there.
Yeah, and I might add, mentally, my students, they really seem checked out this year. They really struggled with connecting with each other, with making friends, with doing any kind of after-school activities. And I think behaviorally we've really struggled. I've had a lot of students who just admitted that during the pandemic that they just kind of ran the streets, that there wasn't a whole lot of learning that was taking place. And so now our effort is to try to bring them back into the schools, and they're bringing with them a lot of the behaviors that we had. So I know the situation at West High had definitely improved by the end of the year, but we really struggled with students, with violence, with graffiti, just different vandalism that was taking place, and just trying to reteach all of these behaviors that are expected of students.
And I also think that when we're looking at the pandemic from a new perspective, this is the new normal. And so what worked prior to the pandemic may not work going forward. And so many of the times when we're thinking about students with problems with SEL, we always deal with punitive consequences and not as much support with restorative justice practices. So this is an opportunity for us to take what we've learned from the pandemic and move forward. And hopefully with more funding, we can begin to put in place some of those restorative justice practices that help to rebuild, and not just the relationships among our students, but among teachers and students, parents and schools, working together to build a stronger Salt Lake City.
I want to jump in again and say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about too, because an unregulated adult cannot even dream to start to regulate a classroom, and a kindergarten classroom that's unregulated. That's my herding cats. Yes, exactly. But the truth is, a living wage is not yet achieved by those staff members who are not full-time staff. They are not being paid enough for the burden that they've been taken on. The burden has increased over these past years, and why be a para that is spit on by our special ed students? Why be a para that has to cover teachers' classrooms for a whole day and not be paid just that stress. I mean, I don't know if it would be worth it for an extra $20 an hour or whatever it is. It's so much, and then for them to sometimes not even be invited to staff meetings because we don't have the wages to cover them to be sitting with us after school, to be part of our team, even though they are a crucial part of our team. Even our custodians and bus drivers. I mean, I wish we could talk to get to each other more, but we don't have the capacity to do that right now because we just don't have, I don't know, the funding's not there for it. But it needs to be there, especially so much more for our parents.
Thank you.
Any follow-up questions before we move on? Senator Weiler.
Not a question, but I don't know. I just want you to know, I've been in the legislature 11 years. We've increased the WPU every single year. Some years it's been 4 or 5, 6%. Other years, earlier in my career, 2% because we're coming out of the recession. But once we do that, that money goes to your school board. They set salaries for paraprofessionals. They decide, mental health things. So I just want the teachers to understand, we're not sitting at the state capitol deciding the salaries. We're deciding WPU, and then those decisions are made by the school board. So I'm hearing you, but if we give you another 6% WPU next year, and your school board gives it all to you as teacher raises, which is kind of what usually happens, and I'm not against that, don't look at us because we're funding the WPU. If you took in all of them.
Representative Weeks Runner.
One thing that really struck me, the very first week of the legislative session, the very first thing we did was take care of the WP, take care of the education. And I hope that people understand that. I really understand. That was the most important thing. Nothing happened before that WPU was initiated. And that's really in the school boards. They're the ones who decide where that money goes. So you need to be talking to them, making sure that they understand this is the need that's required.
But I think, just speaking as superintendent, there are a lot of things that we have to fund now for schools to function that were not services that we had to provide. Mental health supports, family supports. So there are other supports that we have to provide so that our children are successful in the classroom to get some of those other things. And so when we make decisions to provide services, and as an example, our board was forward-thinking in providing full-day kindergarten. And so that was a priority that our board made because that was a need in our community. But they talked about hiring social workers and mental health therapists and psychologists. And so there's a whole lot of other stuff that we have to use the WPU to provide because now we're in that business of providing those services so that our children can thrive academically.
So let me ask a question, following up the comments of my colleagues, Superintendent. I think that's what we're getting to, the social services piece, and all that, comprehensive, holistic way of trying to help someone. So in that case, should the state legislature then fund those auxiliary programs that are now, through us, and not give it to the boards, local boards? I mean, like, you guys go to use to those schools, you guys decide salaries, so I have a school board member here, right? You guys don't, and that happens, so in this other pieces of social services, we've done a lot of things in terms of crisis, intervention crisis task force, testing funding, the MCAT, and all of these other programs. Should we then take it on ourselves and then just make sure that the schools have access to those services? We should be running those because that's where it gets, convoluted. To your point, 9% is nothing for what you guys are doing.
Right.
So, I agree 9% is nothing. with the surplus that we have now, the problem with the surplus is that it's not on point. I call it the uniform money. The school will be gone by next year, by the end of this year. So it's always tricky with the on-point funds. But who should be in your president of the school board or in charge of distributing the funds?
I think it has to be the local boards because every district has very unique needs, just like every school has a personality and unique needs. And you have to be closest to where those needs are to determine how those funds are allocated. What I'm saying is we've got to take a look at essential services in schools outside of those that are academic, like school nurses, school counselors. Some districts don't have school counselors at the elementary level. Our board was forward thinking and knew that that was an essential support for students to thrive in the classroom. And so we have counselors in all of our schools. And so looking at the needs and then being able to take this finite source of funds and try to sprinkle some on the needs. We have 10 social workers in our district. We need many more. And that's all we can afford.
And my only concern with that is that the standard of services, by doing and allowing locals to pay, and I'm not against it, is problematic. So like we get with nurses, for example, or with certain type of social or mental health needs, where even trauma-informed services, where they certain local school districts do not follow certain rules. Right? So I like the approach of local knowing better, but then there's also some huge disparities when that happens, and not so I just let us because I think our challenge is to represent once mental services. And to me, it's like, why education should be getting the funds to take care of it. But I want to make sure the standards are, like evidence-based standard services. So then, I'm telling you, maybe not solid school district, which you guys want to be your priority, but there are other districts where it's scary.
Right.
And I think,
in my simple mind, I look at things like, so we know how many total children are in our school district, in our schools, in the state, right? And if the legislature said, okay, for counselors to be effective, for instance, we need a 250-to-1 ratio for counselors. So knowing how many students are in our state, the legislature can determine how many school counselors are there needed, and they're able to be allocated. Those funds would come to our district. We would then hire because we would comply with the counselor-student ratio. For social workers, for school nurses, some of those ancillary positions that we're having to fund, simplistically, if we know how many students are in the state and we set a ratio for those professionals to be effective, and we fund that.
Yeah, will you use the mic? Thank you.
It's right there.
We don't all have a Dr. Gatto.
Why do I have to be the one who uses the mic?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Reynoso mentioned paras and not being able to provide. There's a 29-hour limit per week on paras. That's a statutory issue, right? That's state code? Right. And so, we can kick the responsibility to the board all we want. There are definitely some critical pieces, and I think I've heard every single one of you mention the need for support staff and paras. And it's not just paraprofessionals in the classrooms.
can I
There are two levels offered. I see Melissa with her. Sorry, we've got Melissa's. Okay, we've got Melissa's next door, but yeah.
It does become a dollar issue because after 29 and a half hours, what we need to do is offer their benefits, and then that makes that paraprofessional a lot more expensive. Not less important.
very, very important. And in fact, in some ways, the more time that they can spend, if we could offer a full-time contract, for example, then we have benefits. We're going to have a little bit more sustainability in keeping people because they know they've got benefits and they've got a job and they can be more included, as Jeremy Reynoso is accurately saying. But it then becomes a dollar amount issue. So we can't afford as many, and we've actually added more contracted positions. We've consciously made that decision over the last couple of years to add more contracted positions. But that, by necessity, means fewer.
Right, and I understand that, but as my point was, there's a lot more than just deciding how the WP is going to be spread across, and it varies obviously based on the different school districts. You know, if there are federal regulations that we can't circumvent, then we need to look at what dollars have the best ROI, and I would say, from the sounds of it, from our professionals, paraprofessionals are a way that we need to look at other ways to improve the employment package if benefits isn't one of them or whatever it is. But it can't just be, we've shunted you 9% increase, 6% depending on how you calculate it, and why aren't you fixing all the problems? Because there are some things that just that WP can't address, especially if we don't have the baseline for those SEL services.
Dr. Gatson, thank you for explaining, how it is correct we do get the money and the board decides how, we divide that. And it is correct. My goodness, in my eyes, teachers are angels. That's just like hands down. It is a reality. And every parent has experienced, some traumatic experience of being stuck with 2 or 3 kids or just one kid sometime during COVID time. And it pained me that there is only a certain percentage that we could add, to increase the pay for teachers. But one thing I'd like you all to know is that there is a lot that goes behind the scenes. I promise you that the board is not just taking money as like, forget about it, we're going to take it from this teacher and give it to this person here. Absolutely not. Because our schools would not operate if it were not for teachers. Do we have to do a better job at finding resources? Absolutely. And so the way you can help us as well is please make sure you reach out to the district leadership because they come to us and they ask us on how we can go about fixing this or that. And to the legislators, anything that can be done. I mean, we can stand at the Capitol building probably with a basket and just ask for some money to pass down because we really, really, really do need some financial assistance in there. It pains me that paraprofessionals actually do come to school and yet they are not receiving the benefits of health and so. And it pains me that we do not have enough money in there to pay them full time. We had to tap into the resources in schools, to have some of them be full time because we do recognize their importance. So just please know that I lose sleep over it. Hence the bags, under my eyes. So just know that we are really, really trying to figure out a way we can get that happen.
I just want to say 3 quick things. The first one is there's more resources. We actually, during COVID, did give some, in addition to the increase with the WPU, did give some strings-attached money for counselors and for nurses. So we have also given that. The second thing is, I've mentioned it to Dallin and to another principal in your district, but you have to engage with Tracy Gruber, who is the Executive Director of Health and Human Services for the state. You don't have to do everything alone. We also just gave them money to help gather the resources. They just didn't know where to put it. So I told Tracy this week, give it to the schools. At registration, there should be information if you need English classes, if you want help getting a job, if you need help. Here are the things that are free. Some are regardless of immigration status, some are not. But it is their responsibility. Work with them, partner with them of what resources are available, or Head Start, whatever it is. Work with the Department of Human Services for what they have and how they can help you and partner with you. Underneath, yeah, yep. And then the last thing is, it would behoove all of us in the state. I really don't like trying to recreate the wheel every time. Look at another district or two. Find out their best practices and adopt them. You don't have to reinvent it all by yourself. Turn to other districts. What is working with your ESL students? What is working with your counselors? What are you working with? Violence, whatever it is.
We are proud to often be that district too. We
are
very proud to be that district often. Not all the time, but I think that is often, we often lead the way, led the way on many things that we actually were talking about last night in Superintendent Gadsden's review. So I'm really pleased to say that I think that's always the school district leads out. And I will say to legislatures that I'm happy for funded mandates that are worthwhile. If you want a mandate, for example, full-time kindergarten for every student that wants it, not every student wants it, for every family, but if you would fund that, fine. Give us the funding that way. We'll take it.
And we just did for Title I schools for kindergarten. So we are helping you. We can't do everything for you, but I'm just saying there's a lot of resources. Nobody's an expert on every single field. Utilize other districts and utilize Health and Human Services.
Thank you. Does any of our panelists have anything to add before we move on to another question?
Yeah, on paraprofessionals, one program that I think has been really nice to offer our paraprofessionals to show them that we do value them and we can offer them something is the Grow Your Own program. So I don't know, so they can go to school and continue on and be potential teachers and continue in education. So that has been really nice. So they'd like to continue that program for our paraprofessionals.
Thank you.
Can I comment about the Grow Your Own, because I've been heavily involved with them as well. The Grow Your Own program is to recruit paras to become teachers. It's a career pathway for paras to become teachers, and I think it's phenomenal because it specifically, I mean, a lot of paras in our schools on the west side of town are women of color who live and teach within schools where their children attend. And so if these women, these educators can become teachers and be paid, almost 4 times as much as what they're being paid right now, that's an amazing change to our community, and that's an amazing benefit to all other children of color who are looking for role models or looking for the vision of what they could become as far as knowledge movers within our district and state and city. And I think that's the root of democracy, is in how we uplift each other.
Thank you. Our next question.
Yes. I just want to make a comment just because we're in my district. So welcome to my district, Glendale, where I live just down the road. But I think you raised an important point, Jeremy. We can look at other schools and what they're doing, but we have to look at the demographics of Salt Lake City, which Granite School District has similar demographics, and so does Ogden. But the demographics here are very different than other areas. And so when you're working with the families that we're working with, and because of historical issues, we can't forget about history here, we have unique needs. And so it's important for us as legislators to understand what those unique needs are before we come and judge what's going on in this district. Because I'm proud of Salt Lake City School District. I'm proud of what you all do. Am I in the majority up there? No, but I'm going to stick up for you. So thanks.
Thank you. I will also add to what she just said. We are one of 3 school districts in the state that have a majority of our students who come from a minority racial or ethnic background. So we are very unique among the 40-something LEAs in the state, Thank you for reminding us of that. I need to correct a mistake I made earlier before I move on, but I failed to acknowledge our president of our School Administrators Association, Dallin Miller, who is deeply engaged in conversation right now, but I apologize for failing to acknowledge that he was here with us when I acknowledged our other association presidents. I also wanted to make sure I acknowledged Senator Kitchen and Senator Iwamoto, who have joined us on Zoom. You can see their names over there, back there on that screen. They were unable to join us in person, and I think Representative Moss was popping in at some point, but didn't want to move on without acknowledging those people, and I apologize for not doing it earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our next question, what efforts are you doing to get parents more involved in their children's education? That's a great question. Anyway.
I think through our school community council is one way that doing that, and our PTAs and utilizing those resources and making it valuable. One of the things that we changed, we were in person, but then with pandemic went over to Zoom meetings, and it actually increased the number of families that were able to participate in those meetings, making sure we're communicating out everything that we're doing. I think that is one positive that came from pandemic, is that our efforts to communicate increased. We had it at Highland Park that each of our teachers needed to communicate weekly, have a weekly communication with the parents. We were CC'd on it, so we knew exactly that they were getting it, so that if they had questions, that even if they couldn't get a hold of the teacher, they said, oh, in that teacher's weekly email it said this, so that communication really increased, and it made a difference in our school community council and within our PTA, because more were able to participate, because some didn't come because it was around dinner time, kids at home needing to do all of that, and so it just gave us some avenues that we had not taken advantage of before, and I think that weekly communication and supporting them and reaching out is huge.
And at our school at Whittier, we have an amazing principal, Dr. DeLeon, who is bilingual. We have a large multi-language population. And so just what I love about her is on a day-to-day basis, she gives out announcements in both English and in Spanish. And so for many of those parents who received correspondence home that may have not been able to read it in either English or Spanish, but being able to hear the announcements, we've had STEM night, we've had art night where we encourage our parents to come in. And so I just think just having that where they feel part of a community. We call ourselves the Whittier Village. We make everyone feel welcome, and I think that is one of the greatest foundations, is just to build a family of parents, teachers, parents, everyone is working together to build for a greater school system.
I was going to say there's also a role for support staff as well. And so our teachers reach home, you call home, reach out to parents, meet with parents, send emails and so forth, and our administrators do the regular communication as well. But I'm the coordinator of the Freshman Success Program at Highland High School. And so there's a real opportunity for support staff to kind of work in those in-between spaces. And so, be able to reach out to parents and say, hey, I just had a great conversation with your child. I love the fact that they do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm not as wedded to the school schedule, the classroom schedule. And to say, I had a really great conversation with this student, your child, but this is something that we can work on together. How can I help you? And so there's room for non-teachers and non-administrators to really support what's going on in the classroom and what's going on in the building. And for some of us who are either classified as student advocates who do get, I think, $12 an hour, and then they're paraprofessionals who get a little bit more, we're able to say to students, hey, what is it that you're interested in? Let's try to, are you interested in joining a club? Are you interested in creating a club? Let's try to work on these things together, and to really support them in also non-academic ways. And so, that's one of the things that makes a great team, is that you have people in these different roles really coming together to get to know the students and their families, reaching out to the families, and then supporting the overall effort.
I'm going to put Deirdre on the spot again quickly. Oh.
Cassie, James, can you all talk about the program that we have going where parents are supporting one another and providing that community?
Are you talking about Padres Comprometidos? That's the one I was going to talk about just now. We're all on the same wavelength here. We have a program called Padres Comprometidos. It's a curriculum that's available nationwide, and it allows families who are newcomers to the U.S., to our district, to be able to learn about how public education system works, to learn how to be advocates for their students. We recently had a graduation for our latest cohort. And I think, Deirdre, I was going to put you on the spot because I think you've gone through that program, haven't you?
Well, I went through the training. So
okay.
I was a parent, and Salt Lake School District graciously let me attend the training, and with other administrators and teachers, and it was a great thing. But here's a great example of how we need to. Yes, we can look at what other people are doing, but we also have to know the facts on the ground. And so I went through this training as a parent who was really involved in the schools, trying to make sure that we invited more parents into the process, because I felt like I'm a really privileged parent who can show up and I can talk to parents and other parents and teachers and so forth. But I went through this training and I had a lot of support from the principal. I said, we need to do this. At Highland, we need to do this program because it helps parents know more about the school process. And you will probably know from your own experience that, you might be super involved in elementary school, but as students move up through the high school levels, you get further removed. There are fewer opportunities for you to participate. So I said, we have to do Padres Comprometidos, and the principal was really supportive, and we're going to reach out to our Glendale families and other families throughout our boundaries, because our boundary, we're located very far east in our school boundary, and so we have a lot of students and families who don't feel as connected. And so I went to do a little research, and then I found out all the stuff that's happening in Glendale. And so, we've got to look at what's going on and what really works well, but we can't also land and say, here we are. There's a lot going on throughout our boundary. There's a lot going on through our school district. And so we need to maximize, learn what people are doing well, but also see the facts on the ground. And so we needed to take a step back and say, we're not going to just show up because there's so much programming going on. We need to figure out who the players are, who the families are, and how we can work within that kind of that environment.
And she mentioned that the boundaries run east-west. So we're in a part of the city that is really, really far away from where the kids who live here go to high school. Their elementary and their middle school are right here, but they have to go all the way to the other side of town for high school. But we're very lucky that we have 3 community learning centers that are run in part with the support of the Salt Lake Education Foundation. One of them is just next door. I don't know which direction I am, but somewhere next door is the Glendale Community Learning Center. That space is a community gathering space. There are classes there. There are programs day and night. There's early childhood programming available there, and things like this Padres Comprometidos initiative that really bring in people from the community, and especially people who don't know how to get into the schools because of a lack of language or a lack of just knowledge about the system in general. So we're lucky that we have those. Again, we are unique, and facilities like this are one of the tools that we have to serve our populations that are so diverse. Did I miss anything, James or Dr. Buendia? Dr. Buendia oversees our family and school collaboration efforts as well. So if either of you has anything to add. Dallin, would you mind handing James a mic? Thanks.
Well, I just think that our community learning centers have been a significant 3 locations where we have Liberty, Glendale, and Rose Park. We've been able to use them as a hub where families can really have access to opportunities for learning opportunities. And Padres Comprometidos is just one of many adult programs that we're offering. And right now we're in the process of also implementing ESL, basic, intermediate, and advanced, and that's going to be sponsored by Horizonte. We do a lot of collaboration also with our health clinics. Our clinics are located at each one of these CLCs. So besides that, I think what's important is just us working with the principals. And most recently, we had about 30 parents participating in the SCC process, the School Community Council process, from Mountain View and Glendale. And we're building a track in the back. It was interesting to see the level of participation and understanding how important is their voice. So I think it's really important for us to continue to strengthen that. We appreciate all the support, but I just can't thank enough about our board who actually envisioned this. We have 3 clinics, 3 CLCs in the state out of 7. And because of it, during the pandemic, we were able to use these locations as centralized places to provide resources for our families. And I think there a lot of work to be done? Yes. And this is why it's so important when the legislature gives us some funding to provide resources, opportunities for our families. We're collaborating with these agencies, so thank you on that.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Okay, please.
One thing I wanted to mention that we are doing. So, for some reason, families think when their kids get to secondary, they're not welcomed in the building, or we don't see them as much. So, we have worked really hard in putting ourselves in elementary schools to get to know the families at that level. So when they come to the secondary, they know us. And this year, we're super excited. As someone mentioned, our students go to East High, which is really far from here. And the feedback we're getting is that our ninth graders aren't doing really great up at high schools. They are having a hard time navigating that whole system, and parents aren't up there advocating as other parents are. And so to kind of help with that, we are doing a transition counselor. So we are funding a counselor, our 8th grade counselor, to go up with our 8th graders up to East High with them and have that person that our students and families know and can go to help navigate that too. So kind of creating that whole elementary, middle school, and high school connection and supports for our families. And so it's been great. Our counselor that's going up there, she was started in elementary school and has been with them since they were in kindergarten. So there's great relationships with the families with her. So we're super excited to see how this goes. Yeah.
That's really good because this has been an issue since my son was in high school. I sent my son to Salt Lake Center for Science Education versus sending him to East because of that exact concern. And I have more privilege than a lot of people who live in my neighborhoods. But those are issues. There's a race issue there, so we can't not look at that either. Because a lot of the families and kids from our neighborhood don't feel welcome still at East. And I mean, this is an ongoing issue that continuously here, so it's something that we continuously need to work on.
Before we move on, I'll also just highlight a couple of the other things I know our schools are doing. I mentioned that we have a lot of basic needs that aren't met in our families. Our schools provide a lot of that. A good portion of our schools have in-school food pantries, whether inside the school or a partnership with the food bank to bring a mobile food pantry to the school site periodically throughout the month. So that's a way to not just bring families in, but also make sure that we're supporting them in the manner that they might need, and doing it still with some dignity. Like James said, our CLC sites became food pantry sites as well during the pandemic because we have family and school collaboration staff members. We also were able to do things like deliver meals when families were quarantined because of COVID and couldn't access, again, these very basic life necessities. Our schools also tailor their programming to their families. So, for example, some of our schools know that they're not going to get anyone after school to come to school community council. So they have things like what they call second cup of coffee, SCC, second cup, right? So they know they're going to get the parents at drop-off, and they do that. Another one of our schools doesn't do a back-to-school night because the families in that community, parents have multiple jobs. They can't come to the school for an evening event. So they have a welcome back-to-school morning on the first day of school, and it's a really big event. It's a tradition that they've had. Again, because our populations are so different, we do things differently sometimes, but we do what we need to do to make sure that we're connecting with our families and meeting their needs. A lot of our schools also implement home visits. This is not done everywhere across the state, but it's crucial for us to know the environments our students are in and how we can support them. A principal who recently left our district, she was at Backman Elementary for years and years, and Dallin worked with her and can probably speak more to this, but when she started, I remember her telling me that they noticed that there was a group of students those students were consistently absent. And they went to figure out why. Why were those students absent? They didn't have a safe way to get to school. One of the last things she did as principal before she moved to a different opportunity she was able to dedicate a bridge that provides a safe way for those students to cross the Jordan River and get to school. So knowing the families on a personal level, being able to do those visits, that's crucial for us here in our district. A few years ago, when Representative Cutler was still here, there was a bill that he was trying to run that would provide funding for these school visits, because it does take staff time. Our teachers are already overworked and burned out. Our paraprofessionals are right alongside with them, as are our school administrators. But because these educators care about their students, some of them are still willing to go in the evening and after hours to go visit the homes of their families to make sure that kids have what they need. Jeremy?
I agree, and I'm glad you pointed out a lot of different things that we've been doing. Like to do all those things, we do need to step up to it. And I think it's hard as an educator to say, we, for example, at our school, in collaboration with a couple of other elementary schools, we started a volunteer soccer league for elementary kids, 4th through 6th grade. And at those soccer games, we have a chance to interact with our parents some more. And guess what? Even the dads show up to that. You know, that's like, oh, I've never seen your dad before. Cool, he's here. And you know, that just takes more time. Our family home, our family school liaison is the one who is navigating or managing the entire food pantry, the entire home visit kind of schedule, and our community liaison. She actually went to school as a 6th grader in our school, you know, at Meadowlark. And so it's amazing to see, like, this is our community, and we need to be able to support the staff that does these things. She connected families who are struggling with mental health issues to our counselor, and on and on. So it's just so important to realize the work that happens. Oh, of course, the food that's being served to students every day, even during the spring break and times when we're not in session, school food is still being delivered, and that's coordinated with the nutrition services and also, you know, our community liaison getting the word out. So it's just amazing work that has to happen.
And I want to give a shout out to our child nutrition department, because they worked under such stressful conditions for the last 2 years. When the pandemic started and everything shut down, that was supposed to be our spring break, so they didn't get a break. They also didn't get a summer break because they continued to serve families. And through staffing shortages, they've continued to serve students in our schools. This year, thank you. This year, things got so dire, we were recruiting volunteers to come help us serve lunch because we didn't have the staffing. We've been short-staffed in our custodial and in our transportation department as well. But these people are here because they care. We care about our students, and they go above and beyond to make sure that students are getting what they need. Thank you for sharing that out.
Can I just add something to Jeremy's? So one thing that I do want to point out is I can't remember the exact bill, but I know that the legislature, you guys provided funding for the Educator directed time. And that money is absolutely incredible. Like, it is the talk among all my colleagues. And so thinking about doing like home visits or reaching out to families, there is money available for teachers that we can now count those hours. We can now get paid for the work that we're doing to reach out to those families. So I do want to thank the legislature for providing that money and realizing that that's a need. The other thing that I wanted to mention that wasn't really talked about is there's a lot of concern about access for parents to our curriculum, about what we're actually teaching our students. I know at West High School, all the teachers are required to put all of their curriculum, all of their lessons, readings, YouTube videos, everything onto Canvas. We had a huge outreach to parents anytime that we had back to school night or parent-teacher conferences to try to get parents to become observers on their child's Canvas account. It hasn't been very successful. I usually have about 1 or 2 parents for each class, but that's an excellent way for parents to connect to the curriculum that we're actually teaching, to see, you know, what we're having our students read, what kind of YouTube videos that they're watching to supplement all of our curriculum. There's another piece to that. Oh, yeah, and so as a teacher, I'm planning on doing next year like a newsletter for parents, giving them questions that they can ask their students to kind of test them on what they're learning in class and just trying to work on that outreach.
Excellent. You mentioned high school students. Because right now we're talking like survival mode. We're talking like basic, right? Food, crossing the street so they don't get killed while walking to school. Can you tell me in high school where Salt Lake School District, their plan on investing on kids actually pursuing higher education whatever that looks like, whether it's even if it's not a 4-year degree, but what are we doing for maybe kids that are on higher risk? Because right now, everybody's talking about just like graduating, like, oh, that's the ultimate. It's like we're losing kids, and even getting them to certificates or whatever, so getting skills, learning skills. What's the plan? I'm not sure that I'm clear. I mean, as a former parent of a kid in West, I mean, I didn't see that being, and then of course it hit in pandemic, so horrible.
I can speak to the Northwest Middle School perspective. We're attempting to get our students in a better place so that they can be on trajectory when they get to high school. The district's got some really great things going on with the CTE to career pathways, and we're going headfirst into that at our school so that our students can see how many career opportunities there are outside of a traditional 4-year education in addition to a traditional 4-year education. And I'm very excited for that program to get kicked off at Northwest over the next, I think we're going to jump in this next year. And those students, when they go to West, they should have some credits that they already have earned in middle school that they can carry on into high school and beyond.
We're doing the same thing at Glendale Middle School, and we've been working really hard to use the same language. So it's like that isn't a barrier when they get to high school. They're like, wait, what's that program? I haven't heard that word before. So really aligning that so that they know. But you can speak.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done recently, we put a steering committee for the CTE and concurrent enrollment for Salt Lake City School District. And we're actually looking at and collaborating with the community college to create stackable credentials, but also to support students as they're going into 9th grade, 10th, and 11th, make sure that they are actually taking a look at potential careers, internships, apprenticeship programs, and working something beyond just a 4-year college degree. We know that a lot of our students want to go to the community college and specialize in a certain field, and we have pushed very hard with Teresa Mbaku, and that steering committee meets every other month. And that's beginning to guide how many credits the students are getting before they graduate from high school. We also have to be real careful because after a certain point, it could affect them financially. Meaning positive or negative because of financial aid guidelines. So it is something we started this about 9 months ago, and we'd love to share that information. I'll share the information with Yandere, and she can send what we're doing with concurrent enrollment, college, stackable credentials, apprenticeship programs, and internships.
Percentage-wise, what are we talking about of kiddos actually using concurrent enrollment? And are we like 1%, 10%, 20, 30? Because my thing is, what happens to the rest of those kids, right? That somehow lost it. Like they were in those classes, they didn't learn anything. Parents never. I two of my neighbors could not enter, so graduated from West High School, went into enter the campus, could not finish a FAFSA application, and they just lost a year. And the parents were clueless. They're like, well, he went. And look, parents don't have more than third grade level education from their own country. So I felt really bad, man, should I been the one with them at the FAFSA application? Maybe. And I'm not saying this is a responsibility of the K-12. I already called Solid Community College, and what are you guys doing? How do you lost a kid that walked into your premises on a FAFSA application, knowing that they're first gen, all of the stories, right? So how many are doing this concurrent enrollment? Right. Give me an estimate, 20, 80%? I have no idea.
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get that number for you, and I'll include it.
I think it's 20%. Because maybe we need to, I love this idea that it doesn't necessarily look like a bachelor's in arts history and, I don't know, Middle Eastern history. No. It looks like many things. But that's one thing. And the other one is, please help me. Because if I hear another kid tell me that counselors are letting them know that, this may be your undergraduate, comments like that, if they're still happening, it's heartbreaking. If I'm hearing a kid being told, there's beauty school for you, maybe, other girls, women, girls of color. So I know those are, evidence for it, but I hope there's a lot of training that no child should be put in a box and be limited or be forced into it, right? To your point, they should be able to have this array of options. And our economy needs those options because we have a labor shortage. So, can we, in whatever we can help to push that. If you guys need our face, like for us to talk about this or have a press with all the kids on the Capitol, I think that legislators will join and bring, South School District in collaboration with legislators in Salt Lake, inviting kids to see the array of options. The foundation has I'm a huge fan. I only invest in Twitter. I love the foundation. That's probably how the most successful foundation in terms of how it's collaborating, integrating families, but we still need to the demand is huge. So what can we do so no kid? It was heartbreaking to see neighbors in Grosse Park, that's where I live, and their parents were like, I think they didn't end up going because of an application. So I go to the kid, I'm like, okay, tell me exactly what happened, like the FAFSA application. Nothing but FAFSA? Yes. By the way, graduated with a 3.8, so one of the high schools. So it wasn't like you will miss the kid. I'm like, it's actually a really good student in math and science that wants to be an engineer. I just lost a year. Anyways, I'm sure there's other circumstances, but it was heartbreaking. I was like, oh my God, why did we just miss this?
One of the things I would say, though, is like the high schools do College Week and so forth, and the counselors do certain workshops and seminars, but I would say that we need to do things early and often, right? And so that's also a question of time and staffing. We also had a university college advising corps advisor, but at the university level, that's a position with, I think they were out of the University of Utah. They were getting paid under $12 an hour. We couldn't keep that position staffed. So the supplemental things that are happening in our state. Well, I would say the partnerships with the universities is something to look at for sure. And we have had a really good I think an improving relationship with SLIC in terms of taking kids over to Salt Lake Community College and doing some of that work, the FAFSA work. But for sure. Yeah. But there are supplemental programs too, like TRIO, which is more federal, and all those things. But what's saying is that it's early and often because there are things that are happening, and part of the problem is communication. Part of it is just tapping into all of those communities. The other thing I would just want to broaden the lens too on the post-secondary aspect because we've got this fantastic CTE coordinator who's doing more and more with job fairs, conversations with career exploration. But I have a number of ninth grade girls of color who want to be lawyers, who don't have a lot of college in their family history, but they don't have that pathway either that's so clear to them. And so I think we can look at career not only as, well, not everybody's going to do a 4-year, but there are a lot of people who could do 4-year who just don't have that kind of exposure. So I think we need to look at careers across the state in a lot of different ways and make sure kids understand that, one, what you choose now doesn't have to be what you do exactly right after you graduate, but also, you could be the legal assistant out of school, and then you could be the lawyer if you wanted to be, all those kinds of things. But, the career aspect, we could say, what is it that we want high schoolers to do and learn? And I think that's a really good sort of exploration. Like, we want them to have these sort of basic understandings, critical thinking skills, writing skills, all this other kind of stuff, because that's important no matter what you do, but also to be able to start looking at, if we have 24 credits, in our district versus 27 in others, there's a real opportunity for more career exploration and not just in CTE, although that is really valuable and important for a lot of our students.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. We've had robust discussion today. Dallin, were you trying to say something? Okay.
Can I say something again?
Representative Hollins, go ahead.
I just had a question. I just want to reiterate what Superintendent said about counselors directing students in different
about counselors directing students in different direction. I could tell you I had a refugee girl over at West High who came up to me, high GPA, and she wanted to go in the medical field, and she said her counselor told her that that's not possible. Let's look at a trade school for you, which was very, very disappointing. And her and I had a long conversation, and I told her absolutely not. I don't care what that counselor says. You're going to medical school. So I think there needs to be some training there, that the counselors are there to support the kids in their dreams, not impose their dreams or what they think they could be on them. That's number one. But the second question is a conversation about our unsheltered youth and what type of partnerships are there that has been maybe created with the youth homeless shelter, because we know these are kids that are falling through our cracks also when it comes to education, and there's always conversation around the adults. But I have a concern for our younger people who families may be the working poor and living out of their cars or living wherever. And what kind of support are we providing? And I know you all talked about providing support about different resources, but I'm talking about academic support for these young people, and are we able to identify who they are?
So our systems let us know, like if we have a McKinney-Vento student. So we typically, as administrators, absolutely know who those kiddos are. And I think what we are doing whole school is really focusing our these components of welcoming routines. A student hasn't been there for 5 days, we're not shaming them for where they've been, right? We're welcoming them into our classrooms and excited for them to be there, and really working on that relationship with those students and prioritizing that. We're also, like you said, the resources, getting them connected with supports, counselors, or a social worker, and identifying what they need and what we can do for them,
There's some outside community sources that are losing their funding too. So VOA, Volunteers of America, I believe we have unsheltered teenagers, and I think they're closing their youth shelter, for example. So I think it's the youth shelter, because we have some students, or they're not able to fund it. That's what I heard. Let's verify it. But I think there are some. That's what I heard. We had a student who had a situation where they were not going to be able to provide services for teenagers. So.
And to your first point, Representative Collins, I know there are a lot of people at West that are actually trying to get any student who's interested in IB and AP programming involved. And so a few years ago, probably 3 years ago, West received a very rare AP award for the schools that have the most students who've never taken an AP class, who are low income, who actually pass the class. It's a very difficult award to receive, and West did receive that. And so that counselor who told that to the student, if that counselor is at West, that counselor is working against what's a huge initiative of many of the people at West, and I think that people at West would like to know that. So you should let someone know. If you hear that, let me know. I heard about a teacher once that said something sort of humiliating to a student, and I went to the principal and told the principal, and the principal had to talk with that teacher, because that shouldn't happen in our schools, and we want to address that. We want to retrain. We don't want to shame the teachers either. Most of our teachers are fabulous, just like this panel, but every once in a while you have someone that says something off the cuff or that they are not thinking about, and we want to definitely take care of that. So I know that there are a lot of people. We want all sorts of pathways at West High. We want the good CTE pathway, but we want every student that wants to take AP and IB classes to have the opportunity. And the numbers at West have increased dramatically. And we would invite you into our testing program in May to take a look at the faces of the students and what they look like, because they represent West High. They're not completely representative yet, but we are making huge strides, and that's very important to us across the district. And speaking as a representative of West High specifically, West High has been a big push to be made. So I would like to know that. You're welcome to call me if that happens. I know that the other representative for West, Bryce Williams, would like to know that too, and we will deal with it right away if that happens.
You want to make sure those students are safe.
Exactly. We don't need to have the names of the students. And I'm sure that if the person is saying it off the cuff, then they're probably saying it for we want. We don't want any retaliation either. We want our students to be safe and happy and to live their dreams. Just like Sandra, Luke, myself, and some other representatives in the
don't need to tell any names. You don't need to tell names except for the teacher's name, or the counselor's name. But we would like to know that so we can talk to those people and make sure that they understand, where we are. Because the teams at West are actively trying to get as many students as possible in whatever program they want to choose.
There was when she told me that, because I was scared because I was told in high school by my counselor that I went to the University of Utah. She said, no, your college material is that's where you're going. So I understand that's
and we have a lot of people at West that are working in an opposite direction, and so we don't want that to happen. So we just need to make sure that we are addressing that with the person that's saying it. So please let us know.
I wanted to mention just a quick idea that in my experience, and of course as a student of color at one point in our school systems, I think that these conversations, especially about our civic engagement, have to begin early and as early as possible, really, and especially the elephant in the room, our race and class statuses. I think it's the hallmark of a good social studies program, really, is that you address the question who we are, or who I am, and what our condition is, and what we're going to do about it. I think this is the three main questions that have to be addressed, and in terms of getting, I think it's super important to continue to support any effort towards an ethnic studies being infused through our schools as early as kindergarten, because kindergartners will talk about race, and if you don't guide that conversation a little bit, then they're gonna go off on it, however they feel is what they're leeching or getting from our culture, as a whole. These conversations don't just begin in high school and don't start to suddenly materialize. Oh, what's my career gonna be when I'm in high school? No, you dream about that since a very young age. And so I just wanted to throw that in there again to say that I think we continue to support that civic engagement from the very beginning, and because that's the only way I got through school, I think, by finding those teachers that really believed in me and helped me to see my place in my country, my community, and that this isn't just a project. I hope to believe, I truly believe that this is not the education in the United States. A Chicana activist just recently asked me, a young woman, she said, how do you reconcile your position as an educator within the project of education as a colonial project within our country? And I said, it's a colonial project, but what do? We decolonize, or we change things. We find our place. We create our place. There's one thing that can never be crushed within the human spirit, and that's the ability to create culture. And so that's what I think we let's just continue to do.
Christy.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't loud enough. I wanted to say something, and I hesitated, and it keeps coming back to me. Earlier in the meeting, it was said that we're not alone. Look at other districts. Look what they're doing. Adopt best practices. Well, that's great, and for my department in finance, I do that all the time. I work very closely with other districts, and we collaborate. For our schools and our community, I hope what's come across is we are unique, we are different, we have a different demographic, we have different needs. What one district does that works wonderfully for them is not the solution here, and so I was disheartened by the oversimplified response. And I hope that what's demonstrated here is the uniqueness of this district, the uniqueness of the needs here, and that what works for someone won't work for us, and what we need is going to take more. It's going to take more funding than the WPU. It's going to take more of the at-risk funding that will identify our students. I just wanted to make sure that that's what I've taken from this.
I was disheartened as well as you, and that person will be representing parts of Salt Lake City now. And so I think that we have to have those conversations with her, but not everyone has. She's one person. But let me tell you, because I don't care if she hears me say this, because I got a text from her just now explaining why I was wrong, is that she has a family member at one of our schools, and so she's getting fed information. And I understand that, but that's not the holistic. We understand. We're your representatives. We understand the uniqueness, the challenges of our neighborhoods, because we've lived them ourselves as you know, when we were coming through public schools ourselves, whether it's in a different state or here, we understand a lot of the struggles of the students and the challenges, because I remind people, like, just because I'm an elected official didn't mean I didn't have challenges. I was a single mom raising a kid. There are times where I'm like, do I pay my gas bill or do I buy groceries for my kid? And that wasn't that long ago. So I understand that. And that's not all our families, but that's a big chunk of our families. So I think majority of us that represent this area and some of our colleagues understand that. And so I just want to say that that's not a reflective voice of all of us.
I don't represent the center, but I spend a lot of time here. I love this area.
And we're so glad you're here.
Like cohort, I'm not listening. Please, not everybody is going to have the whole, you know, won't have that feeling. I'm part of you. I spend an awful lot of time, money, and energy in this area. And I'm so proud of what the school district is doing. What your representatives are doing. Standing up, representing your values and the things that you believe in. To help the kids, the teachers, young people too. Thank you for including me.
Thank you for being here.
The center is not closing. It's the Women's Transition Center on 16th Street that's closing.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Heavy sweat.
We're running a little short on time, and I want to be respectful of our 2 o'clock end time. But thank you so much to our panelists. Can we give them a round of applause? And to all of you, too, because this really turned into the type of open discussion I was hoping to have today. So thank you, all of you, for your questions and your insights. I'm going to turn the time now to our board president for some remarks, and then after her, our superintendent will close us out. Wherever you're more comfortable, I'll give you a microphone wherever you are.
Is this okay with everybody if I stay here? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll be a disembodied voice on the camera. Thank you. It's always an honor to take a few minutes to chat, and I really want to recognize my colleagues in Dr. Kennedy and Mohammed Bade, who is here. I think we do a great job as a board working together to do our best for our students. Last time I spoke at a legislative luncheon, I reviewed the Salt Lake City School District mission and vision, and I know that sounds repetitive for me to go through it again, but I think it's important. The board has recommitted just yesterday to this mission and vision, and our vision is excellence and equity, every student, every classroom, every day. That's a little bit easy for us to remember and focus on, and it's not always easy to accomplish, but we are committed to it and working toward it. Our mission is also really near and dear to me. It was drafted by a colleague and good friend. We all work together on it, but just listen carefully as I go through it. The Salt Lake City School District cultivates a love of learning in a diverse and inclusive school community, committed to educational excellence and integrity. In collaboration with families and community, we hold high expectations for all students, respond effectively to individual needs, and provide a safe, healthy environment in which every student can learn the academic, problem-solving, and social skills required for success in college, career, and life. And as a board, as we work toward this mission and vision, we fully understand that it's the people here that are doing the work that affects our students and that gives them these opportunities. And I really appreciate those of you who are working daily with students and affecting them. So I hope that comes across from our board, that we really, truly value the work that happens by our employees for our students. And I will include our child nutrition, transportation, and buildings and grounds for sure, and our office professionals. Oftentimes, the first person a student sees in the day is their bus driver, the last person they see at the end of the day, and that relationship is a touch point. We know how important that is. And with child nutrition, the board has, in addition to the mission and vision, set some priorities. And we talked about these in a board meeting yesterday as well, and recommitted to our social and emotional priority, so social and emotional learning and literacy, and some other things that came up, which, looking at proficiency rates and disaggregated data that way, making sure that we're closing gaps, that's a priority for the board. Safety, you heard that in our mission statement, safety is a priority. Graduation rate, looking at CTE participation. All of those things are important. And we're also working on updating our student achievement plan, and we have priorities there. And for you legislators that are here, I appreciate those of you that are still here. Some of the things that we prioritize are things that, like early childhood education, we could always use more funding to support early childhood. Before school programming and after school programming, our school day doesn't match the work day for most of the people who are working, and funding for after school programming and before school programming is essential and a priority. As we've talked earlier, we talked about social workers. We could use more. That's something that this board has prioritized. We have counselors in every building. That's something that's unique in Salt Lake, something that we've prioritized, but there's always more support that could be had. I think that summer school is a priority. It's something that we're doing using one-time funding. We'll have it for 2 years because it's ESSER funding, but I think it's something that it's important that we study and look at, and we could potentially use legislative support for summer school because there will be needs that way. I do think it's important that we talk a little bit about what the board has been trying to do using the resources we've got to support our employees. We take the resources that we get from the legislature and do our very best to make sure that they get in the hands of the people who are doing the work. And over the last couple of years, we have increased the hourly salary. It's a commitment to get to a living wage. We are doing it incrementally. I wish we could do it all at once, but we're doing it incrementally and intentionally so that we can sustain it. But we would really like to get to a living wage for every employee that we have, and we certainly hear the need from this panel and from the survey that Yandri did, which I thought was great, that more supports for teachers so that teachers can focus on the real science of learning, the skill and trade of learning, and that we can have other support professionals in the building to provide that support for students. And so we have worked on increasing our sub pay, and I was really happy to hear that we have increased our sub pool by 200 or so subs this year. It's still at a high 80% sub fill rate, which means 10% of at least 10% or 12% of our classes aren't being covered. So we're not there yet. We always strive for 100%, but we're getting better. We're making improvements there. One thing I'm really, really proud of this year is that we are able to support paid parental leave for our employees, and that's a long time coming. I wish it's something we'd been able to do sooner, but I think it's an important benefit. I am proud of the work the board is doing. I'm proud of the work our superintendent is doing. I think we're focused in the right areas on the right people, which are our students and the people who work to support them. Dr. Kennedy, did you want to add anything since you're here? And we'd love to hear from you.
I think you summed up everything really nicely. I will just say that only one other district that, and on the Wasatch Front at least, I don't know about the state, does paid parental leave, is my belief. So that was a big stride for us, and we're really pleased to do that. Really pleased to offer our employees a 4.25% raise this year. You know that the WPU, I'm sure it's been talked about earlier today, does not equal the a pay raise, and so we gave all of the WPU, and then we actually kept our tax rate. We floated our tax rate, so we'll do truth in taxation, so we could give that to our employees. That was really important to us to do that. And we know that you have a hard job too as legislators and as representatives, and we thank you for what you do and for representing us, because we know that a lot of times you're out there representing us and uncovered, and we appreciate that. We understand that you're doing a lot for us, and we want you to know that we see that. And then I just would echo what President Ford has said to our employees, that they're fabulous. And what you did during the pandemic was amazing, and what you're doing now to make up for lost learning that you did a lot for anyway during the pandemic is really incredible. And we know that we saved lives, and we know that you saved lives by doing what we did during the pandemic, and we appreciate what you did, and we appreciate the efforts you made, and we appreciate what you're doing now. And we're seeing those things. We saw those things in the numbers yesterday. So thank you so much, and thank you to all the support people as well. We appreciate you, and we see you. We want you to know that you're seen by us, and we do appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. I appreciate that, and I'll just end by saying I am honored to have been able to serve on the board with great colleagues and amongst all of you who are doing this work to support students, and the work is still ongoing. We had good conversations yesterday about our student achievement plan, and really what stuck out to me was our business administrator, and Christy Hart works closely with him on this committee, is looking at that student achievement plan and making sure that our budget is aligned very openly and transparently to what's in that student achievement plan, so that we can show how the money we are spending is affecting the education of our students in all areas that we're responsible for, which is a lot. And so it's an overwhelming job for everybody, and I feel that. I see that. It's what I do is overwhelming, what you do is overwhelming, but when we're focused on what's best for students and we come together and we partner for it, I think it's exciting too. It's energizing, and we have potential to change trajectories for children, and that is thrilling. And if we can do that even for one, then I'll feel successful, and then let's do better and do it for 21,000. So thank you, and I'll turn the time to the superintendent. Thank you, Superintendent.
Actually, Superintendent, I'm going to say one quick thing. A big thank you to Sam, Brian, and Chuck in the back, who are helping us live stream. We decided to do this kind of last minute, and so I didn't want to end without thanking them for everything they do and for making this possible. Thank you, guys. Superintendent.
So I will share, as our board president did, excellence and equity, every student, every classroom, every day. And I have to say that because that is an expensive vision. We're saying that we're going to invest and ensure the success of every one of our students in every classroom, every day. That's our board's expectation. That's the expectation that I have in our district. I'm so fortunate to stand on the shoulders of some great people, great educators, and great board members in this work. And legislators, I know you probably go to meetings and hands are out all the time. It's because we need more, and our children are worth it. We need more, and our children are worth it. I believe that it takes an entire village It really takes an entire village to ensure the success of every little one in the village. And that includes our legislators giving us the resources that we need to do this work, to meet the basic needs of our students, looking at Maslow, so that students can self-actualize. They can reach that point of self-actualization. I believe when you raise and you contribute to the strength of students, you're contributing to the strength of families and eventually the strength of communities. And so our goal, our work has got to be student-centered and family-focused. We want to feed our children so they are full for a lifetime. And that is the work that we're invested in. That is the work that we do every day. Because we wake up and we know that our children are worth our best effort. And if we know that, our legislature has to know that our children are worth every penny that you give to school boards to meet the local needs of students. Our school board does a good job with that. They allocate every penny they have, and they sometimes have to scatter that, where we have 10 social workers, and some of those we were able to get through grants. And we have how many nurses now? 8, serving 21,000 students. 10 social workers serving 21,000 students. So we do a lot with a little, and we can use more. If you don't think about anything else when you leave here, in your debates and your oral arguments and your collaborations with your colleagues, remember, our children are worth it. And the resources that you provide to our school district and others allows us to feed students so they are full for a lifetime. Thank you all for coming today. Thank the wonderful educators that are in the room. We appreciate you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, Yandra, you're going to have to bring me back because we didn't talk nothing about
Thank you.
You did an amazing job.